very, very pleased and excited to see you guys from all over the place.
Very pleased.
Very pleased. Hey, Mike. So yeah, here it started to come. We have some London here. We have some people still coming in, and we're gonna let them in. So before I start, let me thank you, all of you, for coming in. I know most of you. I don't know all of you because you're from all over the place. We have behind the scene Susan from Syllabuster, which might come up and say hi to us. Hi, Susan, your microphone is closed.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Ori. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Susan came from Holland, and she's going to take your questions. So let's get to the gist of it. If people are going to keep coming in, they are welcome. But oh, here they're still coming in. They're still coming in. So welcome to everybody. I'm so excited. There's so many people, so many friends that coming with us, and keep coming and keep coming. Somebody stop me! I'm so excited. Well, for those of you that doesn't know me, I'm Ori Davidovich, and I'm so excited to be here. I'm a professional coach. I'm a mentor of second career people, so people that have been doing a lot of stuff in their life and they decided to take the plunge or didn't take the plunge yet and want to do something else, something meaningful with their lives, and need some hand to do that. I will invite you later on. Susan will put you in the chat few links so you can join us if you want some support on stuff like that, or if you want to keep this dialogue after in our Facebook group or in our LinkedIn profile or all over the place. So I'll come back to it in the end. When people will stop showing up for a second, and I'll be able to introduce you to my guest speaker today, Mike Black. So straight from London, I brought you Mike. And Mike, you'll excuse me if I cannot concentrate when people keep beeping here and coming here. And get me more excited, and
that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Like we have already 20 guests with us tonight. So let me introduce you to Mike. Mike Black, my best friend, is a qualified accountant and is a business coach. And Mike have 30 years of experience in management coaching and business culture and financial system. And Mike is here today to talk with us, as you can probably guess, about limiting beliefs and how eliminate limiting beliefs. If I'll slow down, maybe people will understand me, isn't it, Mike? Mike, I know a little bit about your background, but people don't know yet. And I know you have a very rich background in the public sector and in the private sector. Maybe you want to tell us a few words on what you did in the past so people will know to situate you a little bit in your experience.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much, Ori, for inviting me along. And I just welcome all your guests, and I'll leave you to continue to open the door for them while I talk a little bit about my experience. As you said, some 30 years, some major organizations, corporations. We're talking the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation in particular. I was there for some 8 years in their television sector. Also, our National Health Service. I've also served there for a number of years also. So in a sense, that's just an example of some of the public sector. In terms of the private sector, Some of the names might not be familiar to you. W.S. Atkins, he's in the construction consultancy business, quite big in that. Rent to Kill Initial. Now they're more in sanitizing and fumigation, and very much in contracts with the health service also. And then more recently, in the education sector, the London School of Economics. That's probably a lot bit more globally known for, as a university. So yes, quite a plethora of experience in industry.
So thank you for sharing that. The guys that come from England definitely go wow, and the guy that come from other places might say, like, what is he talking about? So so let me go back to what is he talking about. Because Mike, in all this very wide experience in different structures, you've been going in a lot of change management, and you are trying to bring people aboard in creating business culture and changing a state of mind. And I can imagine that when you do that, you have to face some resistance or some agents that are sabotaging your effort. So can you say a word about this resistance that you might meet when you bring people into change?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's almost human nature, really, that any form of change we have a reaction to, and especially when it actually moves us from our comfort zone. And so what we see is that resistance to change can primarily be the evidence of limiting beliefs, I would say.
So you share with us that in the base of this resistance come this limiting belief. Can you explain us what is this limiting belief? What do we actually talk about when we say limiting belief?
In simple terms, we can say that it's thoughts or it's opinions that actually drive us to assume them as absolute truth. They tend to mold us in an understanding of what is truth. And so by so doing, we actually either are very proactive in what we do or reactive in what we do. And hence it can have a positive or a negative effect on how we address change, how we address challenges, and how we address progress in life.
So yeah, that's kind of reminds me what Thomas Jefferson said. We hold this truth to be self-evident. There is these things that are so clear in our mind that for us it's evident, and we don't ask ourselves, is it true? Is it not true? Is it really evident as we take it to be? And maybe that's a little bit easier to illustrate through one or two examples, if you have one in mind, Mike.
Certainly. And I think perhaps the most common belief, and I'm assuming common as in a British realm, I'm not too sure about the rest of the country, certainly probably in the States as well, I'd have thought. But money is the root of all evil. Now, for me, this is sort of a potentially been pulled out of the Bible. Unfortunately, it's been pulled out of the Bible and misinterpreted, because the true interpretation is that the love of money is the root of all evil. So you can see how just leaving out that one word could actually tarnish somebody's understanding and maybe somebody's approach to money. So that's one. The other is don't burn your bridges. Don't burn your bridges. Now, that kind of suggests that whatever you're doing, whatever you're pursuing, make sure that you've got something to fall back on. Interestingly enough, one of my inspired actors, Denzel Washington, has been quoted as saying that he totally disagrees with this approach. He says, if I'm going to fall, I don't want to fall back on anything. If anything, I want to fall forward. And in his sense, he's saying, look, whatever I'm doing, I want to continue to pursuing. I don't want to go back to what I've left. So again, you can see again how that could actually hold people back.
Yeah, that's kind of what we say, like to burn the boats, which means like you don't have a way to go back, you have to go forward. So I can see that, and I'm sure you can go on and forth to find many examples which are cultural. And I know that for many people, the examples or the limiting beliefs are coming from personal experience or personal trauma or just personal decisions that they took in a very young age. Most of the time 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. Liz Borrow is talking about that a lot in the 5 Wounds. If any of you read that amazing book. What I want to invite you, Mike, if you can elaborate maybe or give an example about a limiting belief that can come from more personal story, family story, or something from a personal point of view.
Certainly, I have to. My go-to point is my father. My father's always been.
That's personal.
Yeah, has always been a role model to me in many shapes and form. Certainly a disciplinarian of that age. But also very, very influential in terms of my education, in terms of my career pursuits and the like. So as I said, very much an influence. Now, and one of the things that I had noticed and had picked up in his pursuit was the number of businesses that he had actually ventured into, which turned out to be failures. And that kind of stuck with me. It kind of gave me a sort of a concern about going into business for myself. And so for many years, I was very reluctant to do that. And I think that stems from that experience.
Well, that's very personal, and thank you, Mike, for sharing this intimate background with all of us. So I want to ask you, Mike, when you are confronting limiting beliefs with one of your clients or in one of the businesses, how do you go about that?
Well, I have a 5-step process. Firstly, I identify an area of resistance. For me, it's very important to be aware of the concern for that client. Secondly, I get them to write down what they conceive as being the limiting beliefs surrounding that area. On a
listing the beliefs that associate with this field.
Associated with that field of resistance, absolute. And thirdly, again, I then go through a process of getting them to say goodbye to those beliefs, almost recognizing that they've served them well up to that point, and it's time now for them to move on. On the fourth step down is probably a little bit more in depth. Is to actually forgive themselves, and perhaps also importantly to forgive the source of those beliefs, wherever those sources may come from, so that you don't have that sense of denial, that sense of remorse about it. You are free to move on to the next step, the 5th step, which is to give yourself permission to create new beliefs, what you tend to term as unshakable beliefs, liberating, powerful, empowering beliefs, and that's where where the lights really go on.
So when you look at these 5 steps, and maybe for the people that are a little bit less analytical among us, maybe you can give us some story or some example to illustrate a process in which you had this resistance and you list out the resistance and how you went all the way to find a new belief and new possibilities.
Certainly. I can bring to mind one of my consultancy assignments, a large organization, large corporation, who was desperately in need of addressing the inefficiencies and perhaps more importantly, the higher level of complaints that their finance department was getting. Obviously quite embarrassing for the organization. And to me, there was a need for a culture change. So my approach and applying those 5 steps, the first would have been to basically recognize the key points of resistance. Now, through process of interviews and observations, I was able to identify that key point of resistance as being the finance manager. Now we're going to
so it was personal. Yeah,
it was personal. It was personal. And to be honest, in most instances, when you're talking about resistance to change, you're invariably going to be finding that there are personalities. Mm-hmm. In this particular personality, we're going to call him Fred Flintstone. You may recognize the character, caveman mentality, prehistoric views, very resistant to any form of change. And that's what, I had to deal with. But suffice to say, I had recognized it. My second step now was to identify the limiting beliefs that surrounded Fred. And in so doing, again, by further process of interviews and observation,
I see that it's very important to have this process of interview and interrogation.
Yeah.
And maybe we didn't talk about it yet, but I think that it helps a lot to being accompanied by someone that have external view and really see that and can help you or coach you out to find these other possibilities.
Yeah, you made a very important point there, Ori, because ultimately sometimes we're so absorbed, our ego takes over, and so we're not able to see the woods for the trees in those instances. So certainly somebody professional, a coach like yourself, for instance, would be able to actually benefit in that space.
Yeah, Friedrich Nietzsche talked about that when you're in the swamp, you cannot really grab yourself from the hair and take yourself out of the swamp. So I guess that all the way to there, we need some external help sometimes to get a perspective.
Yeah. No, that's a nice visual there.
So
not being able to pull myself out of the swamp. Yep, I understand that.
So when you were talking with Fred, what were the limiting beliefs that you were able to list for him?
Well, I identified at least 3. The first one was he believed that there was only one way of doing things. Secondly, he assumed that no one understood his role, his job, his challenges. And then finally, he assumed that everybody was against him. Certainly the departments who were complaining about his lack of delivery was against him. So there was some serious concerns going on there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we needed to take it to the next level. So and this is step 3, where we would be getting him to say goodbye to those beliefs. Mm-hmm. Now, this approach I took was very much a group approach, and maybe a little bit smoke and mirrors, because what I did, I presented to the department the process of the department in a football team analogy. And by so doing, I was able to give Fred the opportunity to see his workings, the workings of his departments on a different basis. And strangely enough, but amazingly enough, he was able to grasp the fact that in his team, he was lacking a goalkeeper.
Okay.
That goalkeeper was somebody who was able there to field all the complaints that were coming in and actually pacify the customers, whether internally or externally, so that they would be able to feel that they've been addressed. So that analogy actually worked to a point where I saw there was a mind shift going on. And that mind shift was taking him from thinking and viewing his department not just as a finance function, but also as a customer service. And that in itself led him to start thinking now differently about how he can actually, his team can operate and how he can actually address some of these concerns that he's been getting.
So it's a very big change of view, because before he was looking at himself and how nobody understands him and his difficulties, and now he's really finding a role of someone that thinking about the other department and serving them. So he's shifting the center of attention from himself to the other.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got it, Ori. He's recognized that, you know, there's more than one way to do things. His eyes are now open to other possibilities. And now he's recognizing also that somebody else understands his problem. And so he kind of, I could see him warming to me from that point, in terms of being able to be more receptive to some of my ways, as it were.
So how did he go away about this other department when he was talking about this other department before? Is the dark side, if I remember?
Yeah, you remember that. It. You remember that, yes. Now that was one of his beliefs which still needed some work to be done. And that was, you know, they're all against me. And obviously once you've got an attitude, entrenched attitude towards, in this case, a department, it could be a, you know, an individual, but in this case, it was a department as a whole. You need to go one step further. So that would have been my fourth step. My fourth step would have been to get him to first of all forgive himself for recognizing those limits, but also forgiving the department in this instance, in terms of the concerns that they have for him, and obviously the lack of service that they were getting. And I felt that there was only one way to address this, and it was basically a face-to-face confrontation. Mm-hmm. I had to take them down that route. I had to put them in a room together, facing each other, but I had to be in the room as well as a referee, just to make sure there wasn't any hanky-panky. But here's the thing: once they were able to outline, you know, their concerns, and Fred was able to hear their concerns, he was now able to recognize that it wasn't a personal thing at all. It was very much business. It was very much frustration that service wasn't being delivered, and he now was able to move from this idea of it being a personal slant on his work to basically a department saying, look, you know, we're not getting service here. This is how we'd like things done. And because he had already moved into a customer service line of thinking, he was more receptive to it. As a matter of fact, one could say that they were in a forgiveness process, and they didn't even know it.
Yeah. So did he keep calling them the dark side later on?
Yeah. Now that's a good point, because I suppose to actually close it, I needed to be sure that in his mind he had moved. And so the fifth step then would be for him to be sure that he can actually take on board new, empowering, more liberating beliefs. And like you say, this idea of the other department being the dark side was very much an indicator for me. And when I saw the finance director actually speaking to him at one occasion and asked him the question, so Fred, how are you getting on with the dark side? To my impression, Fred responded by saying, "We no longer call them the dark side. We are here to serve. We are here to serve." That was Fred's new empowering belief.
Yeah, so that's a big shift, and that's a big shift in business culture.
Absolutely.
From being administrative and just doing his role, thing after thing, in thinking about what actually the other department or his client need. That's a very big shift.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and I think to a certain extent, these things have a sort of a snowball effect, because I'm sure the way he operated with his staff, and to a certain extent other members of his team, would have been impacted by that also.
That's interesting though. So that's a big shift, and I can see that when you help someone to see from a different perspective, and when you're bringing the other department in, and you actually be able to see things from their point of view, there is a different point of view to consider. So different possibilities that come in. So it's important to have someone that will help you get this perspective.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you for this illustration, Mike, and this example. Go on, feel comfortable to ask your question, don't hesitate.
So what I was wondering is, are you the one who recognizes the limiting belief, or do you ask them questions to get them to recognize the limiting belief? Like, his limiting beliefs were, no one understands my role, and and you could tell that in his conversation that there was only one way to do things. So how did you bring up to him? Did you ask him the question, are you willing to see this in another light, or how did you open that up for him so that he could see that?
Okay, so that's a very good question, Trish. Now, there's two aspects to it. The first one, you've quite rightly identified. Are you, the individual, able to recognize what's limiting you, what's blocking you? And chances are no. And the reason for that is that we tend to develop an ego which is sort of built on our experiences, built on other aspects of our lives. And so remember, what we're saying is that for us, it's truth. And until you actually find another form of truth, you're not going to move from that. So that's one of the challenges you're faced with when addressing limiting beliefs. So that's one aspect to it. The other aspect, which is again key, as you say, as to how do you then raise that awareness in an individual? Yes. And usually it's always going to be difficulties. It's always going to be friction, as in this case. It's always going to be some sort of conflict that actually arises, that you can then try and tease back the layers. For me, I knew, I described him as a Fred Flintstone. I knew that a face-to-face confrontation about guess what, guy, you have these problems. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. So you've almost got to take him out of himself to look at himself differently. And hence the reason why I think the football illustration worked, because it wasn't personal, it wasn't directional, but it actually gave him an opportunity to look at his problem in a different light.
Debs, when you ask what do I consider when I'm formulating my new belief, I think well, that will bring me a little bit to what I prepared for the conclusion, but I'll dive just into it. So the story is like that. First of all, when someone have a belief system, they believe in what they believe. They don't definitely see that as a good belief or bad belief or empowering belief or limiting belief. This is just their belief system, which we write often like the BS belief system. And when someone is enable, or you enable yourself or your client to recognize that this belief system is not just a belief system, but it's a limiting belief, so it's limiting you, you recognize that it's negative. So if you look at that in the Eastern philosophy realm, in the Confucius realm, this limiting belief become the yin. It's negative, it's down, it's bring you down, it's the yin. And the yin exists only in the presence of the yang, on the presence of high elevating belief. So here we have a yin and a yang. So concretely to your question, when I formulate the empowering belief, I want to formulate it as a yang belief, as an empowering belief. So it's always going to be in a positive way. It will never be in avoiding something. It's going to be in a positive way. And it's always going to be associated with an action. Because if it's yang, it's an action. So the yin, the negative belief, the limiting belief, it's something that holds me back, that prevents me from acting. And the empowering belief, it's something that will pull me up to the positive and into an action, so I can take action. So, for example, if I'll take the famous sentence that we relate to Henry Ford. Henry Ford say, whether you think you can or you think you cannot, you are right. Whether you think you can or you think you cannot, you are right. Which means if I think that, for example, I work with people that open businesses. If I think to myself, it's impossible to open this business, nobody will come to my store, then I will not open the store, and that will be right. Nobody will come to my store because I never opened it. So that's become true. Now I formulate the other belief. It is possible. Someone will come to my store. I can open the store. So I have the action and I have the positive. And then I'll open the store. The store will be there. People will come in. People will buy. And I was right again. Something happened. It was possible. It became true. So to resume it quickly, that when I look at the belief system, the BS, I have to make sure that the BS belief system is not a BS bullshit. I have to change that and turn it to be a best shift, something that I can change, something that I can recreate, which will be in the action and formulate as a positive thing. So without the word no or negations in the definition. And then I'm going to have a complete belief system with the yin and the yang, the limiting belief and the possibility or empowering belief, and I can choose my position, and obviously I will try to choose the empowering belief, the young belief in this contest. I hope that's answer your question, Debs.
Yeah, there's probably just one thing I would add to that, and is that sometimes if we just take an example of one belief which can be an opposing belief to another, it's sometimes clear that we can morph our belief system into the new belief. For example, some of you may have heard the term good things come to those who wait. Now, if you absorb that, then you could quite easily say, okay, well, I'm just going to sit on my hands and wait for those good things. And so it's really about your definition of waiting, because it could be waiting actively or waiting inactively. So in terms of recognizing that as a concern for you, you need to perhaps move to something like a stitch in time saves 9. So for me, that's more proactive in itself. If it's something that is in your psyche, you can say, okay, I'm going to combat that by something that I know is going to drive me forward. So again, coming back to my point, it's important that you're aware, first and foremost, of where you're limiting, so that you can shift to, like Ori was saying, move to your best shift.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Mike. It's about it's a lot about action. It's important that the empowering belief is empowering you to take action, and that's what's going to bring the change in your life.
Let's take the next question from William. William, go ahead.
Hello, I'm here. Thank you for the presentation. I'm from France, and you answer the first part of my question with the yin and the yang. And I would like to know about the power of word, because I every time I'm in conflict with my environment, because people don't have the cause consequence of the words. If they say something negative, the negatives come. If I need every time to push some positive word to get a better positive area, but I don't know how to get calm with this conflict with yin and yang.
Yeah, I can tell you, William, I sometimes it's happened that the person in front of me is formulating things in a negative way, or in a yin way, if we'll take Eastern philosophy approach to that. And I'm very, very careful with that, especially when it's become to be their objectives. So I always going to tell them, like, can you formulate that without a negation? And if they give me an example, I will hear the negation. So they'll say like no, or they will say like on something, or there will be the part in the phrase that bring the negation. So I'll tell them, can you say that without the word no, please? And they will have to think about it differently. And they don't always succeed in the first time. So I'll say like, okay, now can you tell that without this word? Till they succeed to reformulate it in a positive way. Does that answer your question?
Yes, your answer so well for my question, because every time it's so powerful to listen people, but to say people say it in a positive way, it will be comfortable for me, and it will be better for the other person to communicate with me. You answer my questions.
Yeah, thank you. Exactly. The important thing is sometimes the people in front of me don't see that it's a negative phrase. So I try to help them that as I speak with a 6-year-old. I say like, can you not use this word? So that's a simple exercise. He will have to use another word. So always trying to keep that very simple, like talk to them as if they are 10 years old, and that's most of the time help them to wrap around it.
Thank you so much.
Excellent.
We have another question from Dave.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure if it was working. So, hi, Ori. Good to see you. Hello, Mike.
Hi,
Hi, Dave. Nice to see you.
Great platform, and it's very useful already. I like the advice from Mike and the 5 steps to follow. So this is good. The question I have is maybe you can't answer, but personally speaking, I struggle with the I would say how can I say, the intellectual side and the emotional side with my limiting beliefs. So I recognize I recognize the limiting beliefs, and in my mind I say over and over 1,000 times logically, but nevertheless I have this feeling that swells up, which is so strong, which really blocks my actions. Do you understand what I'm saying? So how can one manage this battle, this fight between the intellectual part and the feeling part?
I'll take it, Mike.
Yeah, I've got something to say also, but go
Please,
ahead.
go on, Mike.
Yeah. When you actually touch on emotions, we have to consider the source of those limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And how deep ingrained that source is. Mm-hmm. Whether they are experiential, or whether they have been dictatorial, in other words, been dictated to you. So the emotion can be explored probably more readily in a one-to-one session with somebody like Ori, who would be able to help you to take each layer at a time, because it's quite clear that this belief is painful, and it's something that you're finding difficulty actually dealing with yourself. And so, for instance, there's one individual who's asked a question with regards to external perspectives. I think we can provide that external perspective for you, so you can look at the circumstance, look at the experience in a new light, new perspective, so that you can move on.
I see. Good. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Sure.
We can take the questions from the chat now.
I'll take quickly the questions from the chat, because we're going to come to the end of this hour. I see 2 questions in the chat, so let me look at that. First of all, Norman asked us, you spoke about helping the person to see their limiting beliefs as a third party or from outside perspective. Can you please give example for this? Yeah, my quick example would be, I don't know what sports you actually into, but my example would be golf. I tend to hear so many people who struggle with their golf, and they recognize that they're never going to improve unless they actually have a coach, unless they actually have somebody who's watching their swing, watching their hip movements, where their club ends up and where it starts. All of those aspects aren't necessarily going to be, we're not, as a golfer, we're not necessarily going to be aware of it. So my answer is that observation, that process of observation is very key in being able to address the concerns, the limitations, the frustrations that an individual may have. Yeah, and it's sometimes even like when you look at a coach and you ask them questions, you in your coaching, so you know that sometimes you're like, hey, you're doing it again, you're doing it again. And when you point out to the thingy, they're able to see it. Sometimes it's just like, oh yeah, fuck, I'm doing it again. I want to quickly, I saw that Ada asked a question about the 5 steps, so I want to make sure Ada got her answer. The 5 step was identify the zone of the resistance, write the list of the limiting beliefs that compose this area of resistance, because there are most of the time few limiting beliefs that come from different places. Then look at this limiting belief, how they serve you so far, so you can thank them and you feel less guilty about it, which enabled you to get to the 4th step, which is forgive yourself for believing it, and forgive as well the agent that teach you this belief, whether it's your culture or whether it's Mike's father or my father or my mother, etc., etc. And then give yourself the permission or the place to create this empowering belief, this young belief, unshakable belief, empowering belief, that liberating belief, which is positive and in action. Very important, positive is in action. So we're about 5 minutes from the end. Mike, can I invite you maybe to bring us to some of closure or conclusion?
Okay, let's do that. So my key statement with regards to limiting beliefs is always about awareness. Awareness, first and foremost. Without awareness, there's no movement. Once you've actually identified that, it then opens up new avenues for you to start looking at the situation, different perspectives, and obviously with solutions. The blocks that you may have, you need to then be able to address them. It's important to recognize that those beliefs can be formulated, ingrained, whether it's cultural, whether it's family, whether it's religion, whether it's even a global belief. If you remember, it's not that many years ago in the history of the Earth that we thought that the Earth was flat. That was it
was flat at the time, yeah.
Yeah, that was a global belief. And what did that do? That inhibited us from travel, because we thought we're going to go off the edge if we travel too far. So thank heavens for Christopher Columbus, who actually shattered that belief. So you see how these things can actually hold you back from discovery, hold you back from opportunities, hold you back from really finding your better self.
Well, thank you so much, Mike, for coming here and helping us finding our better selves and encouraging us to go and examine, really look at what we believe and how we function, and create our self-empowering beliefs, because that's what it's all about. It's very important to be conscious to what we believe, but it's not enough. It's really important to create the new beliefs, and it's very, very difficult or maybe impossible to do that alone, like Nietzsche explained so well. So Friedrich Nietzsche, and let me tell you about myself. I'm being coached by few coaches regularly, and I think all the serious coaches do as well. So I invite everybody to do that. I want to thank everybody for listening and coming here, so many of you to listen to us. I bring your attention to a few links that Susan put for us in the chat. So we want to invite you to a Facebook group of My Second Career. So in a place like that, we can only ask questions. But if you want to continue the discussion, this is the place to continue the discussion. You're going to find many people like you that have projects, that want to do things. They are dreaming of doing it and they don't do it yet, or they already started, or they're just in school or in different stages, and you're going to feel that you're not alone. There is few experts there that going to help you in different things if you have all kind of technicalities or questions. There is the link to the meetup group that you can sign up and keep knowing about all our events. There is the LinkedIn that I publish regularly on LinkedIn, empowering and reflection and self-development and philosophical ideas that I have and I would like to share with you. You'll have the YouTube link, the YouTube channel that you will find the recording of this talk and all the other talks that we're going to bring here available for you if you want to relook at it, or if you want to share it with someone that was not available this evening. Please tune in to our YouTube channel. And the last one is the WhatsApp group. So the WhatsApp group, like all my WhatsApp groups, are silent groups. It's not going to beep more than very rarely to tell you the next event is up. So if you're not following very regularly on the networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, Meetup, whatever, you might want to just tune in on the WhatsApp group and get very precise information on the next event or the next guest that we're going to bring on this show, because this show is coming back. Next time this show is coming back is on the 22nd. That's exactly in 2 weeks, and that's in the same time that this one was. Which we're not going to take 5 minutes to tell where is that in the different parts of the world. But it's whatever time it's now, an hour earlier we started. Look at your watch. And on this event going to be a little different, because we're going to talk about last year and next year, and we're going to prepare a little bit for how to make next year memorable, what was happening in the shifting world this year, and how we're going to learn from that and prepare the next year. So because I'm not an expert about next year, because I didn't live it and come back to tell, and none of us is, we're going to invite you to join for a more open discussion, but we're going to bring you some goodies, and we hope it's going to be fun. And next year, you'll have to come on the WhatsApp group or in the networks to know more about it. So I hope you got some good values with that. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you so much for participating. If you have other questions, please don't hesitate to write us in person and find us in person. All of you have the contact of at least one of us. So
there's quite a number of questions in the chat, so we'll try and pick those up and get back to you on those.
Excellent. Yes, yeah. Please don't hesitate to write us in person, and we'll promise each and every one of you will get their answer. Yeah. So thank you again for coming. I had so much fun. It was so excellent. Well, I had fun, so that's what I'm here for.
I had fun.
I hope you got some very good value from that.